question that somebody asks is actually something that multiple people would like to know about worship. So this is not just for people involved in worship teams, because the whole purpose of worship is actually about raising up a standard of worship in our congregations. It's actually all about the congregation. The worship bands are just there to facilitate the congregational worship of the church. And so this is really for everyone. If there's stuff that you want to know about worship, why do we do things in a certain way? Why do we spontaneously sing? Why do we prophetically sing? Why do service leaders do this, do that? Why do worship teams do this or that? It's actually really helpful to us, and we're going to learn as well as we go on this journey together. We do have a number of questions that have come in through the boxes. I'm not sure who wrote this one, but I will start with it because it feels very, very important, and I suspect that it might be for me to answer. And it simply says, is the following statement true? The higher the hair, the closer to God. Well, why don't we ask my brother? It is absolutely, categorically true. The higher the hair, of course, the closer to God. The Lord bestows upon those who he loves a high hairstyle. So I am thankful to him for that. So that is true. That's an easy one to get kicking off with. Right. So why don't we'll go live, and if anyone's been kind of mulling something over or has been provoked by something that's been said, why don't you just raise your hand? Gary, you've got one for us. Wonderful.
Could you take us through the process of introducing a new song into Living Hope? And then the second part of the question is, what can we learn from that in choosing worship songs to listen to?
Fantastic.
So if there is a new song on someone's heart for the congregation to sing, we would encourage you to bring it to the worship overseer of your congregation. They will then take it to the elder, and just questions that we would ask are things like, is it doctrinal? Is the theology biblical? The elders will give it a yes or a no. That's kind of one of the most important questions. Does this line up with Scripture? Does this help? Is this song going to help our congregation to encounter God? Is this song going to lift our eyes to him and who he is and his attributes? And those kinds of questions would be ones that we would ask. And also, is it easy kind of to sing? So quite often, especially in this day and age, there's a lot of tricky, poetic, fun rhythm songs that have come out in worship, which are actually not easy to sing, which makes it even more difficult to pick up and get into God's presence quickly. And then the focus is more on the song than actually Jesus.
Yeah, that's true.
So, we want the focus to be on him, not the music. So those would kind of be the questions we would ask.
Very good.
In terms of actually introducing it on a Sunday morning, don't put it as a first song.
Yeah, that's good.
It's important to help people move with them, journey with them. So something familiar, something solid, something that everyone's going to connect with to start, even possibly not as a second, maybe as a third. So that's, I think, helpful just to and it's actually okay to introduce it. You don't have to go straight in to sing it. It's okay sometimes to say, we're going to sing a new song together now. This song will really help us just connect with Jesus and recognize his love for us. And there's been songs that we've done, Jonathan Hay, that Thanks, listening. Where we've perhaps just needed to anchor it a little bit, like Yeshua. So for those of us that have been around in church for a while, we might know the word Yeshua, we might know its context, the history behind it, but for some people they don't. They've never heard that word before. So just a little bit of, this is where this is from, and when we sing, My Beloved is Most Beautiful, that is taken from a book in the Bible called the Song of Songs, and it's a book about love and blah, blah, blah. So that helps. That's okay to do that. It's good. It's healthy to do that. Also, we have, I think probably most of us have in our congregations Facebook Connect groups or something like that, or even if it's just for your community groups, we'll often drop it in like a WhatsApp or pop it on social media in the week and say, we're going to be introducing this new song, get listening to it so you're familiar with it. It's a great song. Maybe use it in a time of worship in your community group that week, just to help people kind of, so it's not sort of they're coming in cold and they've never heard it before. So those can just be practical things.
That's excellent. One of the things that I love with our worship leaders, they have their kind of worship overseers WhatsApp group, and there are songs dropped on there constantly. There's some elders on the group as well. So it's good just to see what the guys are kind of feeling, what they're thinking, what they're floating. I think also we do have, we are listening to feedback. So when we drop songs into our congregations, there will occasionally be songs that come through that somebody may flag and just say, what do you think of this lyric? So I'll give you an example. Recently we were doing the song I see lightning, I hear thunder. What's that? What I see, which I personally think is an absolute man song. Like, I love it. But one of the lyrics is, it says, I believe there's about to be another resurrection, and it's talking about us. And one of the leaders in the church said, what do you guys think about that lyric? Is that undermining the resurrection of Jesus? Because the truth is, there is only one resurrection. Everyone else will be revived. Like even dead people that are raised, it's a revivification. We come back to life and we die again. There's one resurrection, and the only resurrection we will ever experience is when the Lord comes back for his church. And so we just really pondered on the lyric, and we said we love the song, and 99.9% of the lyrics we just think are fantastic, but that lyric we felt undermines the magnitude of the resurrection of Jesus. So we considered it as a leadership team, and then we actually decided we weren't going to use that song anymore in the church. So we're listening to you guys as well. Like, if you feel there are things that we should be flagging, checking, please raise it with us, and we'll listen and we'll adjust accordingly. That's one of the beauties of being in a church with people that listen to their saints. Oh, sorry.
Honestly, this is my rule.
Didn't realize it was a race.
Thank you, Kaz. Just given the answers to the questions that Gary asked and the criteria of what songs make the cut, for want of a better expression, do you think there's a place for more in-house written, produced songs at Living Hope? Because given the locations we've got, the amount of people, wouldn't it be great to have more in-house stuff, maybe written by your good self?
Let's just pray. Lord, we receive this prophetic word. 100%. Jono was living the dream this morning. He's just banging out the spontaneous songs, and it's like, no, Gordon, listen, for me, this is something that absolutely burns in my heart. It's a little bit like what we talked about last night with the tequila songs, that there are songs that need to be written from the heart of this house to the Lord. It's great. We've got so many wonderful songs from Bethel, Elevation, Hillsong. All of these things are wonderful songs, but it does sometimes feel like we're just singing somebody else's theology, somebody else's experience. We're in a really particularly exciting period of church life. We're seeing a lot of deliverance, a lot of healing, a lot of supernatural breakthrough, and it's great to have songs that reflect the experience of this house. The one thing I would say about self-penned songs is it's much harder to get self-written stuff into the flow of the church because people are quite merciless. So by the time we bring songs to the church, the reality is, because of the way the media works and because of the way that big American churches are so good at promoting their songs, by the time we launch something here as a new song, 99% of you already know that song pretty well. And it feels like, yes, we love this song. But when a self-penned song comes that you've never heard, it's like listening to something for the very first time. And we are very quick at making decisions about what we like and what we don't like. And very quickly we can be fickle and say, well, it's come from within the house. It's obviously not at the standard of Bethel or Elevation or whatever. But why not? Why would it not be? Why wouldn't it be? But we need a culture in our congregations that say, no, we actually want to embrace and give room for the songs that we're singing. One of the ways that we do this every week is our spontaneous songs. I mean, some of the songs that we are singing spontaneously are beautiful songs and are moving our congregations, bringing the presence of heaven to earth. But one thing I will say is that in February this year, we were going to start talking about album number 2. But we've just been so busy. But it is something that is really on our minds at the moment, that we do want to do a second album, but we've been talking about launching it slightly differently. To the last one, we did 10 songs and put them all together on a CD. This time, what we're thinking of doing is writing songs every 2 or 3 months and releasing it as a music video, just because it's probably how people listen to music more now is visual. It's not just listening on a CD or it's watching on YouTube. So we are absolutely committed to that, but we just need to create a culture where self-penned stuff is valued because it will say specific things about our church. Did you want to say something?
And also just to encourage you that I think a lot of the time we assume songwriting is for people who play instruments, people who are musical, the worship team. But actually, the example that immediately came to my head was, Nick, you wrote a song a couple of years ago, and it was absolutely stunning. It was beautiful. And he sent it to me and said, look, I want it to, go along to the piano, but I don't play the piano. Would you be able to just work out? And I think there's something really powerful with collaboration. And so if God's put a song on your heart, don't feel like you're limited by not being musical enough or even not being a good writer. Collaborate with someone, and we'd love to, because if it's carrying anointing, then it doesn't matter how it sounds. If you're joining up with a worship team, they can help you in facilitating it in terms of melody and chords and whatnot.
That's a great question delivered with a beautiful accent. Anyone else with a... Oh, I'm going to go...
I'm going to go girl.
Yeah, good, Kaz. I was going to do the same. Just ignore Steve.
Sorry, this may be a little bit controversial, I don't know. Just going back to what Ewan was saying last night about sometimes we worship the worship leaders rather than Jesus, but we always have the worship band in front of the cross. Would there sometimes be a point where we should move the worship band maybe slightly to the side so that we're just focusing on Jesus? And not just here, but in all of our venues when it's one. It's difficult practically. Sometimes we've had the worship band in the middle and we had people around. Just a question.
Yes. I think, yes, but at the same time, yes, but at the same time, just the reality of the dynamics of acoustics and stuff like that. So I know in here, Russo has mixed it up, etc. at times, but I think variety is the spice of life. You don't need to be led by the Holy Spirit to do things that are different, and it's good to mess up people who like to sit in the same seat every time and things like that. Yeah, so... But also, in a nice way, I mean, in an occasion like this, it doesn't matter who's in front of you because it's worshippers. But on a Sunday morning, you might find that up to 2/3 of your congregation have just rolled out of bed. And so those maybe a little bit more visual have an opportunity to say, come with us. That's why it's so important that it's not just what you're singing and it's not performance, but you are going to be, whoever's on the platform in the nicest possible way, you might be a lid. If you aren't spirit, soul, body, if you haven't got that sorted out, and you will help the people come. Your face, I'm not really answering the question, but your face, how you're leading and things like that can, on occasions, help the people into God's presence, and on occasions could actually put a lid on the people coming into God's presence. So those who have the honor of leading us, and it's like the 23rd Psalm, you should see where we are at the moment. Come with us where the Lord is. And you have a great opportunity, rather than leading karaoke, you have a great opportunity to bring people with you. And then, of course, mess it up. You want to do things different. To be honest, for the sake of doing things different. So there are times when the Holy Spirit will lead you to do something different and rearrange things, and then it's just we are in God's image, and God is a creator. So just mess it up, and be different. So partly answered your question, but your question had an answer and was right.
Yeah, no, and not much to add on, but the whole role of a worship leader is to point to the cross. So actually, when we're coming into worship, the worship leader is invisible, and they're simply saying, they might be in front of it now, but they're pointing to the cross, and they're like, we're just showing you how to see Jesus. And if you think about Old Testament Christians, the role of the Levites was they would stand in front of the Holy of Holies. They would stand in front of that veil so that they could go and then enter the presence of God. But it was a time of people would come before them and they would say, let's lead you into the presence of God. So actually, the presence was behind them, but they were like, follow me and I'll show you where the place is. I'll show you where the presence is. So worship leaders have it the hardest because we have to lead worship and be totally dead. We have to be totally humble. It's nothing to do with us. We're invisible. We're not pointing to ourselves. We're pointing to God. But you also need us because we're showing you where God is, because we've been in that place with him throughout the week. And we're just helping facilitate that place of leading you into the river, leading you into the presence and pointing to the cross of Jesus.
Really good. I think from a practical point of view, because of the way we practice worship in the church, which is very spirit-led, there's a lot of interaction between the elders and the worship team. A lot of, if we feel there are prophetic words coming through or songs coming through, there's actually a lot of governance that needs to take place with worship as well. And when the elders are standing in the center, because we need to be available to the people, it's very difficult to communicate with a worship team that's been put in the cupboard at the back of the room. we need to be able to see them. We're communicating all the time. What song is coming next? This is what we're sensing. So that communication is really important. But the other thing I would say about the importance of being able to see our worship teams, I don't know if you noticed Lindy this morning.
Oh, she's awesome.
But Lindy ministered to me. Like I watched her worship Jesus, and it ministered to me. I just felt, this girl, what a beautiful heart for the Lord. And so I'm glad she wasn't at the side, because the way she worshipped helped me to see Jesus. And there was something beautiful in that as well. And I think that one of the things we're trying to do with our worship teams is they're diverse. We have people from all races, because that's what the kingdom is. But not just that, we have people of different skill sets. We've got good musicians. Some of our musicians move a lot. Some of them are quite still. We have worshippers who are very expressive in their worship, and worshippers who are a little bit more conservative. It's okay. The full expression helps each one of us to engage with Jesus. So I think the essence of the question is perhaps if we felt the worship teams were a distraction in worship, we would adjust that. But I think because we vet our worshippers carefully, we train them week on week on week, and one of the things that we talk about constantly is the importance of humility. It's a dangerous position. We talked about that with Satan last night. He loves to elevate, and he was a worshipper. But hopefully we keep our worship teams encouraged but humble as well, so that we don't need to worry about them running ahead of themselves and becoming they're not the star of the show. They're just facilitators. Like I am a facilitator this morning. That's really it. Is that cool?
Good, very good.
Steve.
Actually, you may have partially answered what I was going to ask, so it probably flows well in to my question. And we recognise within all the worship bands across Living Hope various skill sets, and there are some musicians that you can see may have been ex-professionals, so very highly skilled, and there are others that perhaps just starting to twang on a guitar but want to be involved. So there's quite a diverse range of skill levels and skill sets. So how, as a worship team leader, do you manage sort of the expectations of those that are very accomplished, that perhaps may find things frustrating with those that aren't as accomplished, as well as encouraging those that are just starting out to come and join, not feel intimidated? And also, how do we make sure we don't get overly professional and it become a performance rather than actually a worship time?
Brilliant question, Nick and John.
Yeah, so I think one really key part of being a worship team is that we're family. We're not a professional band. We're a family. We're like a life group who journey each Tuesday night together to find God together and to practice our gifts that God's given us to glorify Him together. And so if someone came in who's really professional and someone came in who was just starting, I'd put them together and they can encourage each other in a way, because there's nothing better than when you want to learn an instrument than playing alongside someone who's been playing for 30 years or whatever. You can pick up so much from them. And also just, I think, always encouraging the point of we're not here to make a perfect sound. We are here to make a joyful noise with hearts surrendered to Jesus. It doesn't say make a perfect tune to the Lord. It says make a joyful noise to the Lord. And if it's a noise with hearts for Jesus, then that's the best thing, rather than a professional perfect sound. And so, yeah, we would welcome anyone to a worship team practice together and just grow together. Yeah.
So a few tensions that we always need to balance is we always want to give our best to the Lord. Excellence is not perfection. Excellence is doing the best with what you've got. So we always want to give our best, but you always want to set up people for a win as well. So I remember in the early days, somebody who had just started playing the guitar was set up the front of the Douglas congregation. It was the wrong thing to do, you know. So that's one statement. Another statement is we do not want a culture of A team, B team. We don't think the kingdom looks like that. You understand? This is our A team, and so anytime we are gathering, we have to play our A team because we're more concerned about man than we are about people. We need on-ramps to bring people through, and to bring people through at the right time, they need opportunities. You know, so everybody needs to give grace to one another. And I mean, because this is the challenge of the 21st century worship industry. I mean, we have a mutual friend, and I mean, her husband was an elder in the church, and they hold auditions, right? Which, that is satanic. It makes me vomit. Auditions to join the worship team. When you just run from a church that has auditions, because it's just about music. It's not about heart, really. Yeah. And she was told, the elder's wife was told, you're not the right body image. Oh, no. And that's from a church that we enjoy their songs, which is another question. Yeah. So that is that bad and sick out there. And that comes into the church. So it shouldn't be about age or, you know, body and all those. It's about the heart. But we do need to set people up for a win. You know, I remember in the early days in Ballycottier, that was one thing we did. Another thing was somebody wanted to join the worship team, and the sound guys just made sure the microphone was off. You know, that's not a good, that's a terrible, I find that out, I rebuke them in Jesus' name. Yeah, but that's what can go on. So you want to help the person. You know, you want to help them. They want to, and they have a voice, just needs a few tweaks. Set them up for a win through training and appropriate experience. But no A team, B team. On ramps and also off ramps. You understand? There needs to be opportunities. No clique, holy club. These are the people who are on the worship team. You know, no, there need to be on ramps for people to get experience and join the team. And let me just say, you know, after a season, everybody's roles need to change. My role has changed significantly in the church. So, you know, don't kind of get parked up there for the rest of your life. Yeah.
About 8 years ago, Jonathan and I were in a church in America, and one of the things I was doing was working with the worship team there. And I can honestly say they're probably the best live worship band I've ever heard in my life. I didn't realize they'd all been paid to come and play for the church. But during a conversation with the man that was leading worship, I said to him, where are all your young people? Because it felt like everyone was like in their late 30s, early 40s. And he said, oh, well, we do have young people in the church. And I said, and are they in the band? He said, they're not good enough to be in the band. I said, well, I'll prophesy what will happen. In 10 years' time, you won't have a band. There will be no band left in the church because there's no succession planning. There's no young people coming through. And actually, you're just a ceiling. You're too good. It will psych any young musician coming through could not play in a band like this. It's just too good. 8 years later, I got a phone call from that church. Can you come across? Our worship team has left the church. That man had taken those people out of the church, and there was nothing. There was no succession, no planning, no young people coming through. And now there's a struggle to build up a worship team again, which they are now doing the right way. But that is the problem when we have that mentality of performance. We do want excellence. We never want our bands to be distracting our congregations with poor music. We should be excellent. We should do the very best that we can. But we also have to have a culture of failure where it's okay to get things wrong. That's fine. Nobody's going to pounce on you. We want to raise people up. We have a young drummer in Peel that I think began playing about a year ago. And the first week he played, he was definitely not playing the same songs as the worship leader. And I could see the worship leader's face going redder and redder. And I just mouthed the words to him, just swallow it, and be quiet. And the worship leader was excellent with him, encouraged him. That kid is now an excellent little drummer. He's brilliant because he's been encouraged. We took a hit for a season where for a few months it's a little bit ropey. But now he's just excellent. And that's the culture we've got to build in our churches where we make space for everyone. Okay.
Is everyone at the back?
A couple of things. Firstly, it wasn't me that muted anybody. One, how loud, from the sound side, should worship be?
Very.
Maybe not to you, Ewan. And also, is it important that it's more of like a worship team rather than worship team, sound, vision?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Do you want to say anything, or should I? Yeah.
There is, first of all, there is a legal limit, so just to be aware, there is a maximum that you should, a decibel level, which I can't remember. Somebody told me, but I was deaf at the time. Yeah, very so. Yeah, so there is a legal limit. My little thing, and then I'll maybe see if Becky wants to say something. My little thing would be sometimes you have to start a little bit louder. I'm being practical here. And then you want to move from, ultimately you want the congregation leading the band. Practically, that's hard to do at the beginning. But you want to see that shift as quickly. They're facilitating the congregation rather than the congregation singing with the band. And loudness has a part to play at the beginning. If it's, I have a problem in my congregation, it's full by 20 minutes after we start. So it can be a little bit of a challenge at the beginning, but I would be just beef it up at the beginning to give people confidence, and then as the confidence increases, then you might be able to take it back. But ultimately, I want the congregation to almost embarrass the band. It was it the conference last year, where the leaders were upstairs meeting and like 900 people just, we got in there because we were having an important meeting and they just started worshiping. It wasn't about us. So sometimes, so that's on the loudness thing. Becky, you any thoughts?
I think we do have challenges in different venues in terms of acoustics. If you're in certain parts of the building, standing in certain places, you can be in front, behind the house speakers, got something coming out the monitors, or it can affect. But absolutely, I think what Jonathan's saying, I think a great way actually to, not that we want to do like a warm-up act, but a really, I think, effective way to set the tone for when people are arriving, even if they're not punctual, is to start worship before we start worship. So, we'll often have our prayer meetings at 10, don't we, our pre-service prayer. That's done by 15:15, and then we kind of want to be up there and ready to go. But when I think that some of the times when we've started worship at 10:20 actually has been amazing. And we're there, for 10:30. People are walking into it. So I think that can be a really great way as well, just to help engagement and volume levels and all that kind of thing, that we're not going from cold and trying to kind of ramp it up to where we need to set our level to be. In terms of sound and vision, 100%, we are one team. It's definitely not, you guys are over there, we so need each other. We were just talking about this, weren't we, in the break? A huge thing, I think, with encourage, I don't know if anyone's here that serves on vision, but we can take it for granted as musicians that people know what a bridge is, and that we often, I don't know, Holly and I like to do this quite a lot, start a song with a bridge. So that really helps your vision team to know that, because else they're like, whoa, trying to get through their slides, get to the right slide so it's up there, the congregation can follow. It really helps. If you have a sense that we're going to really start on the bridge of this song, let your vision team know so they have that slide cued. Things like that can really help, practical things, that they understand, like what is the arrangement of a song. Okay, and then, this is like for one of the sessions this afternoon, but vocal cues. For me, if I'm leading from keys, are you going to hear me do vocal cues more than you're going to see me do hand signals? So if you're serving on a vision team, listen for the vocal cue, because I'm going to tell you, or try to, where we're going to go, where I sense we need to go, where the Spirit's leading. But if you're serving and you're able to do hand signals, what does that worship leader do for hand signals? Let's just try and learn that. Things like that are super practical and take time to kind of get to grips with, but it's really helpful just to understand that actually we're so dependent on each other. I'm so dependent on what Steve does with his mix, and because he's going to be adjusting it the whole time. And things happen during the service, things happen, I'm sure you've all been there, like not good setups with sound, and it's been really challenging, and it usually means you're going to have a great service, but it's like it can be hard. You can be going in and have only gone through like one song maybe, but yeah, sound are always tweaking, vision as well. When Jonathan started that spontaneous song about having our hearts cleansed this morning, what's amazing is when vision can pick up on that. And if you're hearing a song being, like a line or two being repeated, type it up quickly, get it up on the screen, because it helps everybody to engage corporately with what's going on. So just really practical things. I think we need to talk to each other more with these in our teams. We need to communicate more, and just when you're going to be releasing new songs, let's communicate that. Let's make sure, sound, no, vision, no, send it to the overseers of your teams. Make sure, these songs are going to be coming up, guys. Get learning them so you're familiar with what they sound like and, the arrangement of these songs and things. So just practical stuff.
Excellent. Thank you. That's wonderful. I think the band is, sometimes we need to hear the band. If we're doing rocking praise songs, we need to hear the music. The word tells us to worship with the 10-string lyre, with the timbrel, with the drum. So our musicians are prophetic as well. They're doing something in the spiritual realm through the music they produce. So actually there are times where we must hear the band. But there are times as well where the band is absolutely subservient to the congregation. And one thing I just say to worship teams is treat your sound people well. The reason that you have... This is the honest truth. I worked in sound for 30 years professionally. This is the honest truth. The reason you have difficult conversations with sound men is because most of you are so inept at describing what you need in your monitors. And if you could learn to communicate, I need more piano and less of this, their jobs will be so much easier than expecting them to prophetically guess what you need in the monitors they can't hear. So help each other. You're one team. Faith comes by what? Hearing. We need our sound guys. They bring faith in the house. Really important. Okay.
Should we do one more from the floor, and then we've got a few on here we'll need to get to.
Thanks, Kaz. One thing that sprung to mind was when we do one, a lot of the time we would have pre-service prayer, and then we would sort of go straight into worship, and it keeps a lot of, you know, the flow of what happens and what is brought in pre-service prayer intact. And I'm just wondering if we've ever sort of thought of having that sort of template within our congregations, where normally we have pre-service prayer and then we have like a bit of a break, and then everyone comes in, and then you get those people coming in at like 1:45, and it's like, sorry, I was in ShopRite. But I'm just wondering if we, like, I absolutely love when we do that at one, we have that sort of flow, and it just keeps so much of what everyone brought. And I'm just wondering if that's ever been thought about between the elders, of keeping that format within our congregations.
Yeah, so, I mean, 9 times out of 10, if I'm leading, it'll probably, our service starts at 10:30. I mean, I'm not, yeah, but if I start the prayer time at 10 o'clock, it'll just flow into, but there's other considerations. So I'm also considering new people and things like that. So there are many things that the Lord wants to happen. So you need to be led by the Spirit, but there are other things that the Holy Spirit are interested in. New people that have just landed in, how do I connect with them? How do we get people, you know, before the service? And so if it's all the time, you know, the music's blasting, people coming in, that can be a problem. So my heart is for the new person, and the Lord's heart's for the new person. But you're asking the Lord, today, what do you want me to do? But often, especially if I know it's going to be a busy morning. It sounds strange, but I don't want to rob myself or the Lord from worship. You know, you got a lot in the, it sounds terrible. The elders are saying, got a lot in this service. The family news is going to take so long. You know, so I'm immediately thinking, let's just get worshiping early. You know, so that's our heart, but also that isn't the only thing that's happening in the morning. And especially if the sound guys haven't listened to this message today, you know, and they kind of are overcooked. I'm thinking about some of our folks, not always older, coming in and sitting there, and things are like unhelpful for them. So there's a whole lot of dynamics. I'm looking to please Jesus, in many ways.
Very good. That's excellent. Question from the basket. And Holly, I'm going to ask you to answer this because I know that you're passionate about this. What about quiet worship? Do we not need more? So I think the answer is yes, because of the way it's written. Do we not need more awe, reverence, and fear of the Lord in our worship?
Yes. Yeah, I think something I love that Mervis from the church in South Africa says is that we don't just start baking the bread on a Sunday, but we're baking it throughout the week and then bringing the bread on Sunday. And it's a very abstract way of saying that actually we're worshipping on our own in our quiet times throughout the week. And then on Sunday, we're coming together with our brothers and sisters and we're giving it the beans. And I think the thing is, you know, there's a whole verse of drawing close to God and he will draw close to you. Actually, if you want to be closer to God, then pitching up on a Sunday and then waiting for the next Sunday, you're not going to get very far. You need to be constantly coming near to him every day. He should be the first thought on our minds and the last thought on our minds. And I think with our quiet times, we need to be getting the word in us. Because I think sometimes someone asked me recently, you know, when the worship leader says, sing your own songs, you're like, what do I sing? And we'll be talking about this in our session with Becky and I, if anyone wants to change their minds. Is that actually the word for Tehillah, one of the words of praise is spontaneous songs from the heart. But actually there's that verse that says what comes out the mouth is from the heart. And so actually, if there's nothing in our hearts, if there's no word, if there's no biblical truth, if there's no thankfulness in our hearts, then we have nothing to say. We have nothing to bring to him on a Sunday. So on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we need to be in our quiet times bringing thankfulness to him. We enter his gates by thankfulness. We have gratitude. We say, God, thank you for dying on the cross for me. Thank you for food on the table. You know, we're pressing in. We're worshiping him in that way. And also praying to him, talking to him, listening to him, taking time to just hear him. And I think it's going to really open something up for us when we come to worship on a Sunday, because we've been in the river already. We're already wet, we're already there, we're already drenched. We're not feeling like we need to push in. So quiet place worship, it's not just an add-on, it's absolutely necessary if you want to press in and experience God on a deeper level.
I think reflective quiet worship is crucial in our congregations. Worship is a reflection of who God is. He's joy, he's peace, he's patience, he's waiting, he's all of these things. And I think personally what I see in our churches is a good blend of these things. I think over the conference particularly, there are moments where the leaders are saying, worship feels quite hyped at the moment. There's a lot of rah-rah, there's a lot of dancing, there's a lot of pumping this, pumping that. And I think our worship leaders are pretty good at sensitively then saying, yeah, let's go for that more reflective time. But I think some of the most powerful moments in worship are silence. When you've been in his presence and suddenly there's no music, there's no singing, there's just me and God hearing and reflecting on what he said. I personally, I would tell you, in terms of music in church, the thing that generally touches me the most is voices on their own. I love congregational singing, but it's the blend that makes it work. It's coming from the high to the low, and that kind of variety of sound actually helps to emphasize the quiet moments as well. And I think this morning, or last night, I think Becky had a moment of voices only, and it's so special. The distraction of music is gone, and you can start to hear the Spirit of God in a slightly different way. And so I think the blend is really, really important. But if you think it's not right, then speak to Jonathan.
Yeah. So we often talk about light and shade, don't we? So whether it's you can't preach. You're not, if you're preaching well, you're not going to do the whole way. There's going to be time for people to reflect. Do you know like I think I did that in my session. Have a think about that. Ask questions. So same in worship. There's going to be light, and then there's going to be shade, light and shade, and then there's going to be vertical, but you can't stay on the. And then there's going to be horizontal. And yeah, I'm not talking about manipulation. I'm just being led by the Spirit. Will have light and shade, and the Spirit will take you vertical. And when you start listening to the Spirit, then you're going to go horizontal. Because they'll say, sing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs to who? One another. There's something going on that you can, there's something there. So.
Move on to this question. It's a good one. And Nikki, I'm going to start with you because you work in youth as well, so you'll be used to this. Isaiah brought a rebuke which Jesus quoted concerning people who honor God with their lips and their hearts being far from him. Is it possible to do the 7 things in the Psalms that Ewan spoke about last night and still not be in true worship? To fake it, really, I think.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. I think definitely people can get caught up in what's happening around them and copy the behaviours of the people they admire or look up to and not understand where that's coming from. I sometimes think it's really cool, but a challenge when we have newly saved people come into church and then after the second week they're already jumping and putting their hands in the air, and you're just really trusting that their hearts are engaged with the Lord when they're doing that. And ultimately, man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord is the one who weighs and judges and knows someone's heart. But I think we can also encourage people and say, especially if you're relating with young people, we often will see in a youth group, there'll be 1 or 2 really brave worshippers who put their hands in the air, and then one by one all the youth start to join in. And just encouraging them in that moment and reminding them why they're putting their hands in the air, why they're singing, what we are doing in that moment is so important, just to keep reminding them, keep encouraging them, keep training hearts. It's not something, it's kind of like, it just reminded me of when Jonathan was talking about a couple. It's not just once that you tell them you love them. It's a continual thing. And similarly, with training people to worship and encouraging them to worship, reminding them continually who it is they're worshipping, why they're worshipping Jesus, and trusting that that impacts their heart to overflow.
I think that's excellent. I think it's very easy to develop a cynical heart about worship. And I would say to anyone that's cynical about worship, because you notice the way another person is worshipping, you have a devotion issue. Because you need not to look at other people. It's nothing to do with you. That's about them and God. But listen, I would say it's much easier to train somebody who has no tradition in them how to worship God than a person that comes from my background. Breaking religion and tradition is a difficult thing. It's a spiritual thing that needs to be broken in us so that we are free in our worship. And there's nothing wrong with copying. If a person comes in and they see us worship in a certain way, it's good that they're seeing life. It's good that they're learning to worship in a certain way, because as they become redeemed and as they become sanctified, those actions will become meaningful to them. And if they've already learned the outward, then the inner can marry up with what's happening on the outside. And so I think we should be encouraging people to go for it in worship and to forget about hype and all of that. That's not really yours to judge or mine to judge. People can come into, the word says in 1 Corinthians 14, people will come in amongst us when we're prophesying and they will say, surely God is amongst you. It doesn't say they'll be saved and say it, but they experience God as an unsaved person. And they can experience worship as an unsaved person, just as every football fan is experiencing this weekend. Unsaved people are worshiping because it's in us. We're created in a worshipper's image. But then we need to train worship to become meaningful to the person so that we don't have a fake it culture. But keep your eyes on yourself and don't worry too much about what everyone else is doing. Becky, this is a good one for you. It's a really funny question. What does Becky do when you have people in Becky's worship team who are out of tune, out of time, not always following the lead, and there's no cohesion in the team? So is there somebody that needs prayer today? So can we pray for that person? Becky, what do you do with that?
A lot of my team are here. Yes. I think one thing that we've spoken about, Nikki mentioned, is almost that kind of buddying up thing. So where there is someone who may have less experience in terms of being on time with their rhythm, and perhaps vocals are not as honed, and they're in that place of learning, is that sort of mentorship approach. And you don't officially have to say, this person's going to mentor you. You might want to, but is actually put them alongside somebody with experience. I can remember when Victor, he's now somewhere else, but he was someone who joined our church a couple of years ago now, probably 2-3 years. And when he first came, there was a real shift for him in learning how to, not that we want to like make everybody play the way we play and do it the way we do it, but his prior approach to drumming, there were a lot of fills. So we were like, we might need to just rein this in slightly. And I can remember saying to Steve, I tasked Steve to kind of, just come alongside, just kind of teach him maybe what we do just in that place there and perhaps what he could do there. And he was so teachable and had such a good attitude. And he made that shift so beautifully without losing the uniqueness that he brought to the mix. We were just able to make it gel and fit. And so being really intentional, I think, is a good word, intentional. Look at who you've got, because God's put the right people in your team. He's brought us there. We were saying this at practice on Monday. I was just overwhelmed with, God has brought people from all across the nations to our island, and he's put the right people in team for right now. So look at who he's given you, the gifts that he's given you. Like, who is he given us? And how can we use them? How can we help them to grow by helping someone else to grow? You know, and let's just, let's just journey together. In terms of, it's very uncomfortable to do, but I would encourage, listen to a recording of yourself singing and maybe have a support group around you after. You know, for the most experienced singer around, you're going to hear some stuff you don't like. And that's okay. That's okay. Sometimes we just have an off day, but sometimes we're like, oh, I'm pitchy. When we first got the inner ear monitors in Douglas, we used them for one and for sort of bigger events. My goodness, like you could hear everything. And for some people, it's too much. Like, I don't want that. But it makes you work that little bit harder. And not in terms of distracting you, but you're like, okay, I need to look at my pitch here. Because if I'm off, I'm going to make the harmony off too. Like, how are they going to do it? So it's okay to, you know, not listen and be devastated or anything, but just listen and learn, just listen and grow. Same with your instrument. Listen to stuff on YouTube, listen to tutorials that Bethel have done, Elevation Worship have done. There's some great stuff out there. You know, have a go at some of the stuff they're teaching you, the riffs for that song and the rhythms for the other song. There's a lot out there. Ask people who have got that little bit more experience. You know, what do you do here? What is that chord you're playing? It's so beautiful. Like Ben Dunlop. You know, Becky, what do you play in between? Like, what are those transition chords? Bonnie's been in touch. Let's get together, Bex. Let's catch up. And can you show me some of the stuff you're doing with chords? And you know, let's just be humble, humility, and let's ask.
Every time I tell this story, I get rebuked, but it makes me more like Jesus. But last year we had something happened in a busy service, and I saw this guy I'd never seen before go to the sound team. I don't know if Steve was there. Yeah. And then Sally was leading the service, and I was preaching. So I was just trying to keep out of Sally's way, and then I saw the guy kind of creating a disturbance with Selu, and Selu sent him to the back of the building. And we discovered afterwards, it was his first time in church, right? And what instrument did he have? A flute. And he had gone to Steve to see how he could plug his flute into our PA to help Becky out. And he said, go and ask Selu, yeah. Right. Now, the reason I tell that is, you always want to, I've used this phrase, set people up for a win. So there's a process by which people are going to come into a worship team. And it may be character issues. That's the first thing, because it's all about character, because you're going to reproduce. If you're given the responsibility of leading God's people, you're going to reproduce after your kind. So it may be character that needs tweaked, it may be skills that need upped, and then it's a nicer way if somebody has to transition into another ministry by having a slower process on whatever night the band are meeting, by having a slower process rather than throwing them at the front. It's all good.
Can I just say one more thing? Sorry. It's okay to regroup. So if there's some real issues with stuff, I think let's be gentle with people, okay? It's quite a raw, vulnerable thing to be singing. Yeah. Actually, your voice is a part of your anatomy. It's part of your body. So that's hugely vulnerable. It's a huge thing to have an instrument and be playing. So don't be harsh with your people. You know, sometimes we've just got to be clear. We've got to be straight and honest. People appreciate that. But speak in love. So you can say things in a certain way, you know. We're not going to have any of this, right, we're stepping you down because you're really singing out of tune. And, you know, can we just chat? I think maybe we just need to work on some of the vocals a little bit. I'm going to put you with this person for a few weeks, and we're just going to maybe just be off rota for a few weeks, but we're going to just work on this. We're going to see how we can maybe really learn to listen, because listening is so important. There are times, they may have been aware, they may not have been aware, but I've addressed the whole team because of one thing happening with one person. Rather than singling one person out, I've done it with everybody because it's good to be reminded together about things. And then there's not one person being sort of, this is your issue. Sometimes you need to do a little come to Jesus. But, address things as one. We're a team. So, yeah.
Very, very good. Very good. Guys, I hope that's been really helpful. If you do have any really burning questions that you haven't been able to ask, just come and speak to one of us, and we'd love to talk to you. Anything that concerns you or that we can help with, we're available all afternoon. So come and bring your questions. Is that a good kind of thing? I think sometimes when we do these things, I think as worship leaders, we can be very prescriptive of what we think you need to know, but it's helpful actually for us to know what we need to know as well.